Hello, and welcome back once again to the Surveillance Spotlight. Today we have something very special as we are going in depth on Linux. Now, to those who don't know, to sort of paraphrase, Linux is a family of operating systems based on the Linux kernel, developed in 1991 by Linux founder himself, Linus Torvald. Linux consists of many renditions, as is constantly being edited for different versions or distributions, meaning there are many choices when it comes to Linux. Today, I'm here with technology specialist Mr. Belmont to discuss Linux. Hello, Mr. Belmont.
Hey, how you doing, Gianfranco?
Yeah, it's great having you here. So here are a few of my questions for you. First one, as most of the world's servers are based on Linux servers, how much experience do you have with Linux yourself?
So I don't have a ton of experience with Linux. My main experience has been I have a Raspberry Pi microcomputer that uses a Linux-based operating system on it. So that's really most of the experience I've had, but I've learned quite a bit about it. I have some friends who prefer it as well. But because I haven't done a ton of that IT end of things, I haven't used it a ton, but I find it very intriguing.
Okay. And now, if you were to choose, would you use Linux for a daily driver / hard drive? And if so, which distro is more your speed?
So if I was using a Linux based operating system on sort of a day, you mean like on like a daily basis, just for everyday type
daily
things?
basis, every day,
Cool.
your whole life, if you have to, until that computer's just gone.
So what I would probably end up using, so as I mentioned, I had used a Raspberry Pi, and Raspberry Pi uses a distribution known as Raspbian, which is based on a other distribution called Debian. And in my research, I found out that Debian has a lot of other distributions that are also based on it. So one that I would probably use that I've heard a lot about is Ubuntu, because I know that a lot of people who I know have used it before, and from what I can tell, it's pretty clean, it's pretty streamlined, and it focuses on open source software. So if I was going to delve in a little bit deeper, I'd probably start there, but I'd keep an open mind and see if I'd want to switch to something else. I did want to ask you, what about you? If you had to prefer one, which one would you pick?
I have a lot of choices. There's a lot of choices, which is the beautiful thing about the freedom of Linux. You get to choose, not like Windows or Mac, where you're just forced to this one area. You can just use Linux for anything. So personally, I only have it on my desktop. I have Ubuntu running, 2204 long-term service, just to make sure I get all the updates until it runs out. And really, though, my dream is I want to have Arch Linux running on my personal laptop, because I've heard it's very advanced, and I actually want to get into more advanced stuff, and I want to keep that as my daily driver. So at least I am very experienced with Linux, because I plan on going into an IT career when I'm older.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Now, I have a good question here. Do you think Linux is underused by public and schools?
I think it's a great question, and I think part of it is people need to sort of see what the appeal of using Linux is compared to Mac and Windows. And I think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, with Linux, it's more sort of bare bones. There's not all that sort of bloatware and extra things installed.
Yeah, there's definitely a whole lot less, so like a lot less bloat. I mean, you can get to install from other packages as well. Like, you're allowed to use any package you want. There's multiple of them. I mean, if we'd like to get more in depth with it, would you like to? There's like, I'm going to say there's two main ones people use. It's from Ubuntu. This one's called Snap, Snap Store, and Flatpak. Let's just keep those in mind, because those are the two that are very popular for installing packages. And when it comes to like machinery and stuff and all the packages, I mean, people have the choice to install anything as long as it's still viable.
Yeah, totally. And I think that if people started exploring Linux as an operating system in places like school and work, they might get a better understanding of how computers and software work as well. Because I feel like on Windows and Mac, they try to hide all of the behind-the-scenes stuff. And then with Linux, you sort of get to peek behind the curtain and you get to customize it more to your needs.
So yeah, that's another thing. Open source. You actually get to see the code. You actually know what's going on. Like, there's like no one's hiding anything from you. They're being transparent. This is what's happening. You get to do what you feel is right and wrong with the system. That's the best part about Linux here, people. All right, and another thing is, what distributions do you think that are going to be the best for beginners?
I think that's a great question as well, and something that, as a beginner myself, like I said, I would probably jump into Ubuntu at first, but I'm not totally sure. I know that the reason why I started using Raspbian is out of necessity, just because it was easy to install on the Raspberry Pi. I mean, do you have a recommendation for beginners?
For absolute beginners, there's a few of them, but the one that's really popular is called Linux Mint, and that one, it's I believe, from what I understand, is the same as Debian. It's an Ubuntu-based one, which means it also is based on Debian. Here, it's very good. I mean, when it comes to like, Linux distros, like they all have their nice appeal to them. They all have the nice desktop and backgrounds that people may have seen,
Sure,
pictures and such. I mean, when it comes to Linux Mint, it's very, it has not a lot of bloatware. It's very small, minimal. It has all your necessities and such. And, I mean, sometimes it might not be looking really pretty.
Yeah.
When it comes to like, desktops and stuff. But, if you can get around that, I'd say Linux Mint is very good for you. And second off, I mean, Ubuntu is a very good distro on its own as well. Yeah. A lot of people say, like, people who use Ubuntu, I mean, this is a bit of a stereotype coming from the Linux community, is that, you're a bit of a script kiddie. Like, you don't really know what you're doing if you're a beginner.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think people should be shamed on it. Linux is for anyone, and whoever thinks, it's whatever is good for someone should be good for them and shouldn't be, ostracized over it. Am I right?
Sure, I agree. 100%.
All right. Linux is known as a privacy-based operating system. How do you feel about the importance of privacy when it comes to operating systems? And actually, privacy in general. What's your genuine opinion on privacy?
I mean, I think that it's extremely important, and it's something that people sort of just willingly give way to nowadays, because nowadays, with things on the internet and then with different programs, it's constantly collecting data and sending out data, and a lot of people aren't even aware of what information is passing through.
Yeah.
And so with a operating system like Linux, because you have more control, you can sort of control that a little bit better.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like most of the attacks that we hear as far as from hackers, whether it's ransomware or different spyware and things like that, usually they're targeted towards those other operating systems. So I feel like there's a better sense of security with Linux.
Yeah, I mean, you do got a sense of security because people are always editing it as well, just to see, like, like, is there anything you could report to the developers of this distro? Very. And here's another thing I heard. I really like how you said, like, how people don't see it. I personally think it's like, we do see it. Some of us do see it. I think just people just don't care anymore about their privacy. It's like people just like stopped trying about it because there's nothing to do. You can't fight it, but you can fight it. And I think, I mean, people give away all their data things. I mean, look at this new bill coming out. It's called the Restrict Bill. From what I understand of what I've been reading about it, it's actually basically like, it's mainly to involve after, the TikTok hearings and such.
Right.
About how it's going to be banned. I mean, some of it says like, one part it discusses about how, using software and stuff that comes from like, enemy countries and using other tools and stuff to, obfuscate from that and to hide the fact that you're using it. As like, that sounds kind of similar to using a VPN in a way.
Sure.
Like, how VPNs are used to obstruct your IP. I mean, like, could some people say with this vagueness that someone could say could be criminalized for using a VPN just for privacy? I mean,
right.
I mean, everyone should use a VPN, in my opinion. It does not grant full privacy, but at least you'll get to do something, a little better.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that one positive thing about that bill and the whole controversy with TikTok is I think at least some people are starting to look into it a little bit more, which is good.
I'm fine with people banning on devices. I restated this in my TikTok ban episode, but mainly just like, I mean, at least people finally get the understanding that we need to have our, focus on what's going on, where our data is going, and knowing like, all people are saying, because it comes from like a Chinese stuff, it's going to be, it's going to be invasion of privacy. I mean, mainly it comes to like all social media. They all do that too. They all, they do the same thing. They give it to anyone as well.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, finally, like, tell me, what are your key takeaways for people who are just beginning to use Linux?
I mean, I feel like the biggest takeaway is that it's really more accessible than people think it is. I know that you had sent me some resources, and they have virtual machines and ways that if someone has a personal computer, they can try it out with not taking up a lot of disk space or a lot of risk or anything.
Yeah.
And just doing a little more research and just giving it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I agree on that. I mean, I've used VirtualBox before. It's a very good tool. It's free. I mean, you really don't gotta do much on it. It's good for when you want to use it. To be honest, I've been actually using it to practice some of my Linux. I've been doing it to install Ubuntu and stuff. I've even been practicing on how to install Linux from there as well.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Very cool. So, Mr. Belmont, it has been great talking to you today. Thank you for your insight on Linux itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone, this will be my currently final episode until we return back again in September to October and when the fall semester begins. Thank you once again, Mr. Belmont. And this has been the Surveillance Podlight. Remember, keep shining light in surveillance, and I will see you in the next one.